Okay, so that says we are live here on LinkedIn. Hi, everybody. Of course, my name is Dr. Keith McNally, and this is Laura Vann-LaRusso, and this is Coach to Coach on LinkedIn. It's 4 o'clock Tuesday afternoon. It's good to have you on the call, Laura. What's going on?
Well, it's been a really productive day and living on LinkedIn for a while in the morning, and I'm glad to be here now. Good to see you, Keith.
It's
And
always it's always good to see you. So I'm still on my countdown. I got 1 week, so next Monday I'm going to be up in your neck of the woods. Well,
yeah,
pretty close to it. So Columbia University. Now I've already mentioned to you I'm going to need a confidence coach, and I am serious because this is a big stage for me, and I just want to knock it out of the park. And so I'm going to be giving 2 talks at I need to look up exactly the building that I'm going to be at, or I'm going to get lost really, really quick. But we're here to talk about mentoring, and I really love this topic. The topic has been coming up rather frequently in my conversations because, as you know, I do a couple of different talk shows, talk series, and even in my book, Walking the Path, I do address the idea of mentoring, but not so much from the perspective of an organization's culture, but from personal perspective. And so, the young man John does have a mentor named Jose. And if Mitch Gray's out there watching this or watching this on the record, because I've just had a conversation with him about my book, he thinks that Jose is not actually John's mentor, but Juan is his mentor, which is a unique perspective. But don't want to give away teasers from the book. I do want you to go out and buy it. But that's a long-winded introduction to say, Laura, tell me,
yes,
please tell me,
yes.
what is mentoring? What do we mean when we talk about mentoring?
Well, we had a really great conversation yesterday when we shared our ideas about it, right? How we've both benefited from mentoring. And I think of mentoring as guidance, personal and or professional guidance from another person. And if you're fortunate, you will have met or you will have received excellent mentoring from another person. And what is the benefit there? I mean, they provide grounding for you, right? Think about any time you walked into a new position when you were younger, not now. We've all been around the block. We have been even in positions of supervising, right? We've even been mentors at this point. But think about the person who is new to the environment, the skill, or the challenge. It's always helpful to have someone in your corner, right?
Mm.
To observe you, to provide you with feedback about how you are doing, what approaches you are using that are effective and what are not effective. And that can happen in your personal life, like way back when I told that story about swimming, learning how to swim and getting thrown into the
I
pool.
don't know if that was more mentoring or if that was more, I'm going to throw you in anyway.
Yeah, well, that's true. He did throw me in, right? But then as we worked through the process of getting over the fear of swimming, he showed me what I needed to do. And he also showed me that I didn't have to be afraid. I
Mm.
really didn't have to be afraid, that it was really more in my head. Um, so that's my idea about mentoring. And I think that organizations need to dedicate themselves to providing that. And I think on a personal level, um, we all benefit from having a mentor in our lives. So what do you think?
So I was hard put to find. Now, I could go to Google specifically, or even, the Merriam-Webster dictionary, which is my go-to, and always has been for quite some time. And so I could go to any dictionary and get a standard definition of what a mentor is, or what mentoring, the verb, actually is. And so it's very generic in terms. And so, and could, because people use this term differently, or we use it and we don't really appreciate what's being communicated when we do say that I'm a mentor, or we have a mentoring culture in our organization, or um, somebody with more seniority is mentoring somebody with less seniority. So I think
Mm-hmm.
we really need to kind of appreciate what it is and why it is so important. And the conversations that I'm having, especially with people who do have seniority,
Right.
either as a coach or in an organization or within a culture, um, especially leaders. And the conversation with leaders is that if you are a leader, you
Mhm.
are a mentor. And better put, if you are a good to great leader, you are intentionally a
Right.
mentor. So you actually take your time, your wisdom, and everything that you are, because it's personal, even if
Mhm.
it may be in an organizational setting, because you want to impact. And I'm using that word a lot lately.
Right.
You want to make an impact on somebody else. And so whether or not you're teaching that person how to make better decisions
Mm-hmm.
or how to understand the culture of an organization or an environment, or how to learn how to do something, or simply how to be a better person, mentoring is very much intentional.
Definitely. It's intentional and it provides the sort of roadmap for the person who's being mentored,
Mm.
right? It you act as a role model on behalf of the person that you are mentoring. My only caveat is that mentoring also allows for conversation.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
because because although I might be a person, let's say, for example, as the communication coach, I might go into an organization and go in there and say, these are the key ideas that you need to think about when you think about diversity, equity, and inclusion. You need to think about what are your hiring practices, or what is your rate of promotion for certain populations within your organization? How accessible is your organization? How do you know that? I can ask them all those questions, but I also have to leave the door open as the mentor, coach, educator, advocate. I have to leave the door open for, wait a minute, I don't understand what you're talking about, because I thought this created greater accessibility for folks, or
Mm.
I thought this was a more inclusive practice of what we were doing, and so you need to have that back and forth rapport and communication skills. And I'm not just saying that just because I'm a communication coach, and also I'm obsessed with words. I love words, That's why I like lawyers, because they're like very, they can take words and really delve into the meaning. My point is that permission, as you once said before, right? The permission to have the conversation while also providing the leadership and being a role model are the ingredients of good mentorship,
I'd
I
like
believe.
to, so yeah, actually in my Google search for how should we focus our talk on what is a mentor and what is mentoring, a couple of very clear words came out. So one, clarity is actually one of the C words. Communication, two,
Mhm.
culture, three,
Right?
and I'm sure there's some other C words out there that really encompass um, what mentoring is intended to be. And so when I hear
Providing
those things,
clarity, providing clarity.
and providing
Mhm.
clarity. And so when I hear those things, I'm also brought back to what some Christians have in their scriptures or ancient text books, is to train up a child in the way they should go, and when they are older, they will not depart from it. And I think that in part encompasses what mentoring is. Now, that it
Right.
also is in scope of teaching and uh, other verbiage that we could say, okay, if we want to make sure that an
Mhm.
individual is brought up in culture and processes, in aptitude, in confidence, and all those things that will create that person's own uniqueness,
Right.
authenticity, and identity, both within themselves and within the scope of their environment. then mentoring does need to take place. And the thing is, it is not taking place as frequently or as often as it should in environments where it's mostly necessary, such
Yes,
as organizations, churches, and even in our local community
schools and
and
schools, even
schools. Yeah.
schools. Yes, yes. I mean, I've shared with you the experience of being a public school teacher, and it's my
Mm.
pleasure
That's actually
to,
a best example. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it was my pleasure to buy snacks for my students that were starving to death, or secretly pack extra bags of canned food when necessary. But was it really appropriate? I mean, it was helpful. It was my pleasure. I would do it because I'm not going to have somebody that I know is hungry just sit there and pretend like I'm not seeing something that's obviously there. But what about providing the role models, providing the mentorship for those young people that allows them to think about, well, forget the food, that's a little off track, but let's think about this. I'll be very brief, talking about mentorship. I was in a situation in the public school where I noticed a trend. And what was that trend? Now, I'm a pretty tough girl for someone who's only 5'2", you know, and I had to learn to be that way because of my having physical disability. I had to learn how to speak up for myself. Otherwise, I'm just going to get trampled. But when I was a teacher in the public school system, I noticed that if a classroom was acting up, and as a new teacher, they really act up because they're testing you. If a male colleague, all he had to do is like open the door of the classroom and say, "Excuse me, what's going on here?"
Mm.
And everybody straightened up like that, you know. And I thought to myself, why is that? And I asked my colleague, and they said, well, a lot of these young people don't have father figures at home. They don't have a lot of male energy at home. And I don't want to be, you know, I don't want to take away from my whole dedication to the diversity and the equity and the inclusion. But I'm saying that that's an example of where more role models could have been used for that particular group of young men in particular, right? And by the same token, there were young women there that whose language was just atrocious, you know. And hey, I can have a potty mouth every now and then when I get upset, but I'm an adult. And these are young children, and they need the guidance. And those young women also needed the guidance. And when you talk about underrepresented populations and providing role models or mentorship for them, I've had friends many years ago, of course. Once I had a friend who was hired for a major investment firm, but she had cerebral palsy, much as I do, and walked with a severe limp. But she also had a slight speech impediment, because CP is really interesting. It all depends on what part of your cerebellum has suffered an injury. So in any case, she called me up during my lunch and said, I can't work here anymore. Well, why is that? Well, they're all staring at me. I just know they're all staring at me because of my disability.
Oh.
Right. So this is where mentoring could come in and help the person to develop their self-esteem. So my bottom line, before I get in trouble with my DEI folks, is that every aspect of a human being, every position, no matter what your sex is, no matter what your religion is, everybody can benefit from having someone that they can go to, that they can receive guidance from. And that's how I think of mentoring. Mentoring really essentially is just guidance from someone else with more experience than you and a more objective outlook, right?
Laura, there couldn't be too much more to be said with that. And that is actually a very clear explanation of one, what a mentor is or should be, and what that impact would be to the person being mentored. So Laura, thank you so much. And for those who are watching or listening, whether this be live on LinkedIn or a recorded session on my YouTube, we'll see you next week. Take care.